Joining us now with a view from the Republican side of the aisle, the minority leader in the State House of Representatives, Themis Klarides.
Welcome.
Thank you, Themis, for being here. All right, so you've heard the budget chief talk. What stood out to you from what she said in regard to the explanation of why decisions were taken?
Well, first let me say I think Governor Lamont certainly has the best intentions and wants to try and fix the state, but it's how we do it that's always, I think, the differing of opinion. We certainly don't agree with the changing and the increase in the sales tax. We've talked in the past about your typical Saturday now is going to look like you get up to take your little dog or cat to the vet, and they're going to tell you you're going to pay more on that service. Then you're going to continue on down the road to CVS to get cough medicine for your child, and you're going to pay more. Then you're going to go and register them for Little League, and you're going to pay more. And then at night, when you go to have that nice bottle of wine and watch Netflix, you're going to pay more. Now, I'm not disagreeing that there are inconsistencies in our sales tax policy, but I think that a fix like this is hitting Main Street, Connecticut, and the middle class smack in the middle of the forehead. And those are the people we need to protect the most in this state, and I think it's very problematic.
You've met with Governor Lamont many times. At first, I know Senator Fasano was saying that he was enjoying just the fact that Lamont was reaching out and talking with him. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that dialogue continues to be open even after the budget was released?
No question. I mean, we couldn't have two more different personalities as governor. I mean, certainly Governor Lamont is a collaborative person, I think, personally and professionally, and he believes that the more conversations we have, the better off we are. And I don't think that changed at all since the budget address came out. He knew that there would be people that disagreed with him and his own party. And I think that open door policy is still there. But again, you have different visions and you have different solutions to problems, and those may not be resolved at the end, but we're still early on, and I would hope that there will be lots of conversations between now and when something gets passed.
The progressive Democrats in the legislature and the unions would rather see taxes, income tax, increased for the rich people. And if they did that would be a lot easier, and they wouldn't have to go to the unions, of course, to get concessions. So how do we work that all out? Should we tax the rich more, income tax-wise?
Well, the reason we're in this predicament, and I'm not saying that any one governor or any one legislature caused a problem. I mean, this is a long-term problem, but unfortunately we had a golden opportunity 2 years ago to negotiate with the state employee unions, and I've said this time after time. I mean, I have many friends and family that are state employees. I mean, they're certainly good people, and it's not about beating up any one group, but we had an opportunity to really restructure those contracts. And unfortunately, in this day and age, it is not sustainable to keep them the way they are. And yes, we did get savings from the contract negotiations, but nowhere near where we needed to. And now we're tied until 2027. That's the problem. And I understand why they wouldn't want to reopen the contracts. I get it. If I were them, I probably wouldn't either, but we're in a very bad situation right now, and we lost that opportunity with Governor Malloy and the Democrats in the legislature 2 years ago to really make a major change.
Have you guys, you and Senator Fasano, for example, reached out to the unions yourself to try to get them to, reconsider, we're really in a bad way here?
Well, we both met with different union groups that have come in and meet in our office. I met with some last week. We've had this conversation before. I mean, you saw the headlines. Once Governor Lamont mentioned he would like to sit down and see if they can do something different. They said absolutely, positively not. So whether it's the governor or us asking, I don't think the answer is any different.
What would you do if you were sitting in, Lamont's seat and trying to craft this budget, because they're saying that they just didn't have a lot of options? And if we're saying, let's not raise taxes, where would you find the money?
Well, I mean, I'll just give you an example of something that I would have done differently. I mean, clearly we don't agree on this tolls issue. And I know that the governor mentioned it would be trucks only. There's been all sorts of speculation as to why he said what he said. I give people the benefit of the doubt, assume they weren't not telling the truth. I think he probably didn't understand it enough. I didn't understand that there's no way you can get that kind of revenue with trucks only. So we are where we are now. And right now, we get the sales tax from car sales that go into the Special Transportation Fund. And if you look at that, We started it at 8% and it increases percentage-wise for the next few years to the point where there's hundreds of millions of dollars in that fund. Now, that is not going to sustain us forevermore, but it's certainly for the next 10 years going to give us hundreds of millions of dollars in that fund. We have also, the House and Senate Republicans put forth a plan 4 years ago called Prioritized Progress, where within existing bonding, so no additional bonding, put forth a plan that in the next 30 years, and I know that's a long time, but that's where we have to look. We can't look a year down the road or 2 years down the road, where we have a responsible way of funding transportation. Now, if you remember, Governor Malloy a few years ago put in a proposal for transportation. There was like $100 billion towards transportation. And if we had that money, I'd be the first person to stand next to him to support it. But we don't have 100 billion cents at this point. And we have huge deficits we're facing. So we have to figure out what our priorities are.
Isn't bonding expensive, though, if you're putting money into already existing bonding, right? Aren't there interest payments on that?
Of course there are, but we have to find the money somewhere. We have to find the most responsible way to do it. That's why ours is $63 billion over 30 years, and it's prioritizing what we need. So we're focusing first on the roads and bridges that are not safe. You know, there's, I think, 15% of our roads and bridges that have to be focused. That's not an option.
And how are we paying for that? I mean, like the tolls, if we go to tolls, it's going to be 5 years before we get anything out of
that,
right?
In addition, well, that's what I just said. The special transportation now fund with the sales tax from cars, that's funding it. Prioritized Progress would fund that, and that is within bonding we have. That's not new bonding. But when you go to look at the proposal now, you know, we hear about Massachusetts and New York. They have it works fine. Massachusetts is twice as big as us in population and in land size, and they have 13 tolls on the Mass Pike. They bring in $500 million and 13 tolls. Our problem in Connecticut is the people that support tolls are saying, we have a big budget problem, we can't fix it on our own, so we have to back it in. The reason there were 82 tolls that were suggested was because they needed $1 billion. That's not, third smallest state in the country. Massachusetts has 13. That was 82. I know the governor has now talked about 50 some odd tolls. But think about the difference. In a state that's twice as big, 52 versus 13. It's not reasonable. And it will not, you know, this whole thing, in-state residents will pay less. They might. But who is going to drive home at what time? You're basically going to have to make a decision. What are you going to get home at 10 o'clock at night now because you can't drive during peak hours? How much money is it going to take? I mean, we talked about every road in Connecticut being told. Now the governor's talking about less roads. But you know what's going to happen? There's going to be congested tolling. So there's less roads, but they need to get the same amount of money.
And what's
going to happen? There's going to be more tolls on less roads.
People getting off, all those people getting off the roads is going to congest the local roads.
Correct.
You know, getting off the toll rolls because they're trying to avoid paying that. So I don't know. It's
what do we do about the gas tax? Because that's only going to decrease as cars become more fuel efficient. Mm-hmm. Is that? Well,
I mean, whether you look at gas tax or toll revenue or you know, the sales tax we spoke of on the sale of cars, that money goes into the Special Transportation Fund. The problem is, if you remember on this ballot, there was a question to change our Constitution, which I was adamantly against because it was not a hard lockbox. It was a nice, pretty box with a lock on it, but there were holes in the back. And so if you can't tell people, don't worry, we'll give you tolls, but that money's going to all go to transportation, that is not an accurate representation. That money can be manipulated before it goes in. You can make the decision before, okay, let's just say gas tax, toll money goes in. But the legislature can now change the sources of revenue that go into the Special Transportation Fund, even with that lockbox language, and that's why it's dangerous.
School regionalization, a quick comment on that. I know how you feel about it, but let the audience know.
I am not saying that natural regionalizations, I come from an area, the Amity School District, that has had a regional school district for many years. It works wonderfully. I completely agree that more regionalization in a way that naturally works is best for this state money-wise. But if you look at the proposal that's out there that had a school regionalization bill with the probate court
using the probate,
yeah, I mean, that is the most preposterous thing I've ever heard. You might as well have put the Animal Control District map out there and said you should regionalize this way. It doesn't even make sense. You want to have a real conversation about what towns and cities work together now that may work in that way and understand and incent them to go in that direction based on what what resources they could get, that's a conversation to have, but doing it this way is just irresponsible.
Themis Klarides, House Minority Leader, thank you very much for being with us.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Come
you.
back on.
Anytime.